Boston, early 1960s. A city known for history, education, and quiet residential streets. But behind apartment doors across the city, something terrifying was happening. Women were being murdered inside their own homes. No forced entry, no witnesses, no clear suspect, just strangulation, and the growing fear that someone was gaining trust and killing without warning. The media gave him a name, the Boston Strangler. But decades later, one chilling question still remains. Did police actually catch the right man? Or did the real killer disappear into history? Because while one man confessed, many investigators believe the crimes were too different, too inconsistent to belong to one person. This is the story of fear, confession, doubt, and one of the most controversial serial murder cases in American history. Now, let's tear into it. Between June 1962 and January 1964, 13 women were murdered across the greater Boston area. Their ages ranged from just 19 to 85 years old. Most lived alone, most were sexually assaulted, and nearly all were strangled inside their own apartments. What terrified investigators most was what they didn't see. No broken doors, no shattered windows, no signs of forced entry. Police began to believe the victims had let their killer inside willingly. Maybe they knew him. Maybe he posed as a repairman. Maybe he claimed to be maintenance, or law enforcement, or someone safe. Whatever he was saying, it was working. As the killings continued, Boston changed almost overnight. Women began carrying tear gas. Hardware stores sold out of locks and deadbolts. Some residents moved away entirely. And still, the murders continued. Early media reports called him the Mad Strangler of Boston. Others used names like the Phantom Strangler or the Phantom Fiend. But in 1963, investigative reporters published a series that gave him the name that would last forever, the Boston Strangler. And by then, fear had fully taken hold. One major problem complicated the investigation. The murders didn't all happen in one city. They happened across multiple jurisdictions in Massachusetts, creating communication gaps between police departments. Massachusetts Attorney General Edward Brooke eventually stepped in to coordinate the investigation. In a move that would later become controversial, he even allowed a parapsychologist to consult on the case. The psychic claimed a single killer was responsible, but police weren't convinced. Because the victims were extremely different ages, different backgrounds, different lifestyles, and the murders weren't always carried out the same way. That inconsistency would later become one of the biggest arguments against the idea of a single Boston Strangler. Then came the final confirmed victim, Mary Sullivan. She was only 19 years old. On January 4th, 1964, she was raped and strangled inside her Boston apartment. 3 ligatures were tied around her neck, and in one of the most disturbing details of the entire case, a broom handle was inserted into her body. Nearby, investigators found a card reading, "Happy New Year." It was propped beside her foot. It felt staged, deliberate, almost like a message. And after this murder, something changed. The killings stopped. Later that same year, a break came, but not from a murder investigation. In October 1964, a man posing as a detective entered a woman's home. He tied her to her bed, sexually assaulted her, then suddenly stopped and said, "I'm sorry." Then he left. The victim helped police create a sketch. That man was identified as Albert DeSalvo. Soon after, multiple women identified DeSalvo as someone who had assaulted them in the past. But at first, police did not believe he was the strangler. Instead, he was linked to earlier sexual crimes. Then, everything changed. While in custody, DeSalvo confessed, not just to assault, but to being the Boston Strangler. He first told another inmate, who passed the information to his attorney. When police questioned him, they were stunned. He knew details about crime scenes that had never been released publicly. Even small details, like furniture colors, matched photographic evidence. To many investigators, it seemed like undeniable proof. But there was one massive problem. There was no physical evidence tying him to most of the murders. Because of that, DeSalvo was never tried for the Strangler killings themselves. Instead, he was convicted of unrelated sexual offenses and sentenced to life in prison. In 1967, DeSalvo escaped from Bridgewater State Hospital with 2 other inmates. A massive manhunt began, but less than 24 hours later, he surrendered. He claimed the escape was meant to expose poor hospital conditions. He was transferred to maximum security prison. 6 years later, he was found stabbed to death in the prison infirmary. His killer was never identified. And with his death, the truth became even harder to prove. Almost immediately, doubts surfaced. Some people who knew DeSalvo said he was not capable of such brutality. Medical professionals suggested he may have been a compulsive confessor, someone who needed attention or recognition. Others believed inmates may have fed him crime details. Some behavioral experts later argued the crimes showed too many patterns to belong to one killer. Different victim types, different methods, different psychological signatures. Some believe there may have been multiple killers operating during that time period. Then, nearly 50 years later, science entered the case. In 2013, Boston police tested DNA connected to Mary Sullivan's murder. Investigators compared it to DNA from DeSalvo's nephew. The result was described as a near-certain match. Authorities exhumed DeSalvo's body for confirmation. The final result? DeSalvo's DNA matched evidence from Sullivan's murder. For many people, that closed the case. But not everyone agreed, because the DNA only definitively linked him to one victim, not all 13. The Boston Strangler case isn't just about one man. It's about fear, media pressure, confessions without physical evidence, and how history can change when science finally catches up. Because sometimes, the most dangerous part of a case isn't what we know, it's what we think we know. These weren't just headlines. These were real women, living normal lives, who trusted the wrong person on the wrong day. And in some ways, the full truth may still be locked somewhere in Boston's past. If you want more deep-dive true crime told in the time it takes to read a graphic novel, make sure you're subscribed. Turn on notifications, because every case we cover asks a bigger question. How well do we really understand evil until it's standing right in front of us? And I'll see you in the next case. Thanks for watching.